Okay, so we're starting on workbook page 555. So we're going to continue solving equations using inverse operations. So if we look at number 1, remember that a number with a variable, that means multiplication, even though we don't see a multiplication sign. So if we wanted to solve for that letter G, we would have to do inverse operations of the 4. So I'm going to split up both sides of my equation. So remember that that 4 is being multiplied with G. So I'm going to do the inverse of multiply by 4, and I'm going to divide by 4 on both sides. Remember, you can use a fraction as division. The 4 over 4 will cancel out, and I'll just be left with the G, which is what we want. G equals, and now 24 divided by 4 is 6. So G equals 6. Let's jump to number 3. So number 3, we want to solve for the E, which is on the right side of the equation. But just because it's on the right side, we do the same steps. So it's being multiplied by 6. So we're going to do the inverse and divide by 6 to both sides because we want those to cancel out. So we get the variable by itself. 36 divided by 6 is 6. So E equals 6. Let's do one with fractions. So we'll jump to number 5. It's the same steps. Y is being multiplied by 2.5. So I'm going to do the inverse of multiplying by 2.5. And I'm going to divide by 2.5 on both sides. Those cancel out and we get y will equal 2. So this is y equals 2. Remember, you could always take your solution, plug it in for the variable, and make sure that when you solve this side, so 2.5 times 2, make sure that it equals this side 5. So we're still on the same page, 555. I just scrolled down a little, and we're going to do problems 8 through 10, which have fractions. So we're going to start with 9 and 10 and then come back to 8. So you can see here that E is being multiplied with 1/2. So we want to divide both sides by 1/2. But actually with a fraction, an even easier way to cancel it out is if I just multiply by the reciprocal, which is the fraction flipped. So if I just multiply by the reciprocal of 1/2, which is 2 over 1, to both sides, you'll see that the 2's cancel out and the 1's cancel out. So when we have a fraction, we could just multiply by the reciprocal. So now on this side, all we're left with is E. Then on this side, we multiply. Multiply the numerators. 1 times 2 is 2. Multiply the denominators. 4 times 1 is 4. 2/4 can be simplified to 1/2. So E equals 1/2. Number 10, same thing. We want to solve for G, but it's being multiplied by 2/5. So what I can do is multiply by the reciprocal of 2/5 to both sides. The reciprocal is 5 over 2. And what we want is for these to cancel out. So we get the variable by itself. If that doesn't happen, then you might be multiplying by the wrong thing. G equals 3 times 5 is 15. 5 times 2 is 10. That 10 goes into 15 one whole time with 5 left over. Denominator stays the same. 1 and 5/10, we can simplify that to 1 and 1/2. So G is 1 and 1/2. So now if we go back to number 8, it's the same steps, but the variable's on the right side, and we're starting with a mixed number. So what you can do is change the mixed number to an improper fraction. So 10 times 1 is 10, plus 3, that's 13 over 10. B equals 39. So we didn't solve anything. I just rewrote the problem with an improper fraction. So that way it's easier for me to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by 10 over 13. to both sides. I'm just gonna kind of squeeze it in there. The 10s will cancel out, the 13s will cancel out. So on the right side, I'm left with b equals, now we could cross simplify 39 and 13. This would become a 1, this would become a 3. So now all we really have to do is 10 times 3 is 30. So we don't really need the 1 in the denominator. So we get b equals 30. So when we had an improper fraction, just make it a mixed number first, then multiply by the reciprocal. Now we're on workbook page 565, and now we're going to continue inverse operations, but if you look at the problems that we're working with now, they have division in them. So the inverse operation that we're going to be using is multiplication. So let's start with number 1. We want to get p by itself, but p is being divided by 4. Remember, a fraction means division. So we need to do the inverse of divide by 4, and we want to multiply by 4 to both sides. That will cancel out these 4's, and we'll just be left with p equals 4 times 5 is 20. P equals 20. And remember, you could plug that in and check. 20 divided by 4 equals 5, so that works out. Number 2, we want to get w by itself. It's currently being divided by 6, so I'm going to do the inverse, which is multiply by 6 to both sides. These will cancel out, and we're left with w equals 6 times 17, that's 102. Last one, g is being divided by 3.2, so we're going to multiply by 3.2 to each side. These will cancel out. We're left with g equals 3.2 times 4.7, which is 15.04. So g equals 15 and 4 hundredths.